Hey, welcome everybody to the NWO show. We're talking everything New World. Obviously, we've got a pretty big announcement starting from yesterday with the PvP blog and some pretty epic new animations. A little bit graphic, a little pixelated because they're sizes. Wanted to give people a good image. Want to introduce my co-host. I've got McLeod here. McLeod, go ahead and say hi.
Hello.
And for the first time live, not that we haven't tried to record him while he's been here other times, and we're having all sorts of fun craziness going on with that. Uh, we also have Bart Ghost here for the first time.
Hey, yeah, those were some painful attempts at recording.
There's nothing like recording an hour and 40-minute show to realize that not a single minute of it has actual content. That was an experience. So, anyways, we have the three of us all come from a varied variety of background when it comes to gaming. We've played a ton of MMOs. Most recently, we played Eve Online, a ton of other games as well. So like, we're used to seeing some of these systems, and kind of the way that they're described. So it could be an interesting way. We're gonna kind of focus on like how these systems might work based on how other games have implemented some of these systems, and what that might mean for the actual game for New World. Um, so obviously they made some changes. This game is not going to be the same game. It's not it's not the open world PvP craziness that there was. They seem to have taken a lot of the feedback to heart and went, hey, we need to find some way of making sure everybody wants to keep playing. Like, wants to have some fun with it. They released a dev blog and a video that answers a bunch of questions, but in answering those questions, naturally there's going to be more questions. There's always the what do you mean by how does that work type stuff. There's only so much they can answer for two reasons. And I want to stress this early on. Obviously, we're still months away from release. So like there's time for some of these systems to change. And then I want to get nailed down to here's exactly how we're doing this. Because if they tell you 100% this is how it's going to be, then they're kind of tied to doing that. So it's kind of this, they need to make sure that they're providing an amount of information to get people interested, but not enough that they're tied to anything specific in case they want to change it in the next alpha stage, in the build up to the beta. Even if they want to change it early in the beta, they've still got a lot of opportunity there. So it's kind of taking that information and parsing what we can get out of it. Aside from that, we also have a lot of information that they've let us into in terms of how they came to be and the evolution of the PvP mechanics in the game, where they were in the alpha. And I'm going to describe where they were in the alpha based on their words. That is the second I can find it in here. Um,
Could be leaving us on suspense here, man.
and I had it I had it
It's
right prior to hitting go, and yeah.
And now it's just like it's all just mangled up letters now. It's just like
yeah. So while PvP changed over the course of the alpha, generally it was full loot, and open world with only outposts acting as sanctuaries. Everyone was vulnerable to attack at any time from other players and the rest of the world. In order to attack, players would flag a criminal intent. Literally, you would just click a button, you'd show us, hey, I'm gonna attack you. You died as a criminal, you would experience full gear and inventory loss. So every piece of armor, every piece of gear that you had on you would drop, including what was in your inventory. So like, if you had been out farming trees and wearing a set of stuff and you were criminal, you would drop everything you had, and you would spawn back in nothing. So there was a relatively big incentive to not dying as a criminal. Big penalty there. But continuing on, if you died to a criminal, you would lose all of what was in your inventory, but you would keep your equipped gear, and the gear that you had would take a durability damage hit. So, a percentage of your armor would potentially take a damage hit. Okay, it's a reasonable system. Naturally, as with everything, there are people that take it to an extreme extent, like to a point where it starts breaking, and they continue on into this. One of the problems we observed with this system was that some high-level players were killing low-level players. A lot. Sometimes exclusively. This often led to solo or group griefing scenarios that created a toxic environment for many players. To be clear, this behavior was not shown by all PvP players, but it was enough to cause significant issues. So let's glean from this what they're trying to say. Effectively, people stopped playing when super high level people came by and just killed them every time. Like, they had a retention problem based on people not letting people even kind of get into the game. That seems like a pretty significant problem, and you want to build a system that keeps people playing the game. So we can kind of see what their thought process is. What do you guys think? Am I on point?
But
Yeah, it seems they had a problem, and whilst I know there has.
oh, I think Bart just had a
Lose Bart?
connection issue.
Am
There you
I
go.
back?
Back.
Okay.
Hey.
Apparently my Discord dropped. What did you hear me say?
Apparently, and then static.
Okay, so apparently from some people the last day or so, that there's better alternatives to what they've done. But it seems, and it was a comment I saw from someone earlier, and I think he hit the nail on the head. AGS has kind of taken a scorched earth policy to what happened, and are just not going to let it happen again because it was that bad.
I
mean, that's
mean,
fair.
I can see where they're coming from in that regard. The issue with, like, I mean, do you mean in terms of scorched earth policy? That's really weird. I don't know why I can't say that. Scorched earth policy, right? Do you mean that in terms of, their kind of balanced style, or do you mean
Just the
specifically
PvP
regarding
changes in general?
just regarding the actions that certain people did in order to actually, like, precede this change?
Not in that sense. I see it in the way of whoever did what they did it. AGS clearly didn't like it. They even say there they tried some minor tweaks. They tried playing about with it at times. That didn't work. And whilst there was possibly a scenario in the middle, they seem to have just gone, nope, we're not having this whatsoever.
Okay, no,
This isn't happening in our game.
I get you. I get where you come from. See, part of me kind of thinks, right, and this is the sort of this is me kind of thinking like high level as well, is this isn't alpha, so essentially what we're doing here, what we're a part of, for the people who are on the alpha, is to essentially run through and try and break the game as best as possible. Well, in the in the way that we would see um the general public would do, right?
Yeah.
And to me, partly this is a good thing, because if the game was released the way it was previously, it would, like, the game environment that the entirety of the public would experience would be the one that drove a whole bunch of people away, to the betterment of the very few. So,
Yeah.
and I know that there are people out there that are like, oh, but my PvP, etc., etc. But like, this was gonna happen whether it was gonna happen, now, or whether it was gonna happen in May, because essentially, Amazon gamers would hit this same problem. So the fact that it's happening now, and you can kind of potentially redress the issue, and bring it more into balance from another direction, is a good thing.
Yeah, like this, we still. Okay, I don't know entirely the scenario, but apparently we still have another alpha to go, then the closed beta, and
then the
then
full
launch.
release. Yep.
Yeah, just, anything can change in that time. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
they could turn around and go, okay, we swung it too hard, guys. We're gonna find a middle ground.
Exactly. Alphas are named such because the alpha stage of game development means you can have fairly significant, sizable changes to core fundamental aspects of the game. When it gets to betas are more about polishing. Betas are more about, the little details and making sure things, are properly built out. So, if you're concerned with the direction, fair enough. Try not to be edgy and memey about it. Try to actually look at it in a holistic way. Try to look at it in a way that you may have gotten information about something and it may seem really bad, but temper that a little bit with the fact that you haven't played the game and these particular mechanics in situ. But make sure that if you're actually part of the alpha, that you play the alpha, especially if you're concerned about these particular balance changes, or about these particular PvP changes, purely to be able to properly assess how it plays in situ with all the other mechanics in the game. That's what I would ask people to do. Ace, you have anything?
And I think that's entirely fair. Like, the goal, obviously we don't know a ton in terms of how things have changed. Like, there is certain things that they've told us, but there is so much more of this that we have to really see in a more holistic state, and actually kind of see it's not well translated into text. You have to see it actually work. You have to see the system, you have to play with the system for to understand whether or not it's going to work or not. Because some of the systems that they've announced here, and let's go back here to the dev blog here. Um, there are what seems like a couple of different ways you can get into PvP. Players in New World will experience PvP by opting into faction conflicts and wars for territory ownership. So,
See, that puts me in mind, like Ace, that puts me in mind of things to some degree like PlanetSide 2. You choose to be in a
exactly.
faction, and then you're in a faction, you fight for dominance within, with certain territories, that kind of thing. And it's a constant thing.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
if it's done properly, like let's say this opting into the faction specifically is done properly with enough incentive to do it, like at the next line here, I want to steal the next line here because it says exactly what I needed to say. Opting into these PvP experiences will be extremely rewarding, often granting you exclusive in-game bonuses and rewards for your efforts. If they get that balance right, they will have a great game. It will not necessarily be a fully open world game, but it'll be a great game in itself. Now,
Yeah.
we also don't know how this faction conflicts works. Like, it could be I'm going to go out and I'm going to join a faction, and as long as I'm with that faction, I'm flagged in. It could be, I'm going to go out to a mission with the faction. When I come back to the city, I can check out and go back to the PvE. We don't have those details.
They gave a bit more detail in the accompanying video, and it was something along the lines of, you can't do PvP or anything like that until... No, sorry, you can't join a faction until level 10. You
Yeah.
can join a faction at level 10, but you can't join PvP until, was it 20 or 30? At which point you
I don't
can
remember that
join
one.
into it through the faction.
Okay.
It was
Uh,
something like
You had to
that.
wait till level 10 before you could flag up for PvP, and level
Okay,
20
that's lower than I
for
thought then.
housing.
Level 20 for housing. Okay.
Those are the
So,
only two level
even
caps
so,
we know so far.
but it's not a mutually exclusive thing. It's not like at level 10 you have to, otherwise you can't progress.
Yeah,
Like,
they did explicitly state in the actual video that if you want, you can play the game from start to finish, without ever touching PvP. Now,
a lot of people
there are
have
a couple ways to think
issues
about
with
that.
Yeah, and you...
Yeah, I think that's part of what's stirred a lot of concern here. That and the no loot drops.
Yes.
That said, it all again comes down to, what are the rewards for opting in?
Yeah.
If the rewards are good enough that they replace full loot, so be it. Fine. If they don't get that balance right, yeah, okay, we've got a problem.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? And I kind of have to wonder to some degree, because really some of this being defined the way that it is still a bit speculative as to what ultimately Amazon Games really wants to do with New World, because a lot of people were bought in on the promise of various different things, and the annoying aspect of that is, as an alpha carries on, the game changes. Sometimes it changes fundamentally, sometimes it doesn't.
In this case,
We've
it's
seen
fundamental.
Yeah, in this case we've seen a fairly radical and fundamental change. um the people who are basically saying reverse it, etc., etc., well, that doesn't bring it into a state of balance. It just brings it into just a different state of, imbalance.
Reversing it brings it back to what we had in the alpha, which was equally as
Yeah,
bad.
it's equally as bad, but just in a different way. It was imbalanced, compared to actually getting it to a state of balance. The only thing that I would say that is a positive with this form of imbalance is the actions of players in this state of imbalance doesn't force other players to quit and leave the game. Like, you might leave the game with regards to, it being a little bit dull and boring for you, but rather that than feeling that there is a toxic kind of aspect to the community that will stay there. You could the things that you can do in the game, the exciting stuff that you can do in the game, whether it's PvP or PvE, can change and bring people in from this perspective of an imbalance, while Amazon Games basically works towards getting it into a closer state of balance between PvP and PvE. If you're following me on that one.
To a degree, yeah. I know Ace is just working on some audio a second, but
It should have just popped up significantly in volume. If it hasn't, the voice is still low. Just know. Continue making edits here.
Hopefully we're a little bit more audible here. But to the point that I was basically saying was, it's kind of up to Amazon Games to really nail down what they want New World to be. Do they want New World to be, dare I say, a theme park MMO? I don't know. The only thing that we really have as clues to what they particularly kind of want it to be is to look how they describe it in various different ways, right? The description for how they described New World, 6 months to a year ago, is different to how they describe it now. You look on the Steam webpage and it says massive multiplayer RPG adventure and action, in terms of tags that they put on the Steam store. I mean, you could say that maybe that falls to within the realms of a theme park MMO, but I kind of feel like there is also there's a lot of scope there for it to be various different things.
Yeah.
And I think it all relies on a balance. If they can nail the balance down, then getting people to PvP won't be an issue. I think there's a lot of overreaction right now, and I think so much of that is in relation to we just don't have final detail and very finite details. And there's a number of systems that, as we've said in previous episodes as well, like there's so many of these systems that there's a lot of intricacy to that. It wouldn't matter the length of article that they put out, there's still going to be questions until we can actually get our hands on it and play it.
Yeah, I was about to say that. They need to show it or let us play it for us to actually kind of get a grip on how it feels. Yeah. Because what might seem bad in these blogs could play really well. We could all be wrong. It could play exceptionally. It could play appallingly. It could swing either way. It's just getting our hands on it and trying it.
Yeah. So, going a potentially a little bit of a different direction here. I've got a version of the map up. It's a version of the alpha map released on their Twitter sometime last year. Part of the reason that I'm bringing this up is that we could talk about kind of zone. So, like, something they haven't talked about is this potential for areas where PvP might be the normal. So, like, let's compare this to like EVE Online. You have high security space in EVE Online. That might be this Windsward area where it's relatively safe. There's minimal risk to going out and doing stuff. And you obtain your PvE only. It might extend into Brightwood and stuff like that. But maybe this mountainous area up above, is going to have requirement of to enter this area. You either have to be flagged up or you don't even have an option, like chaos in it. Thank you for the follow, by the way. We've got a lot of opportunity here for other mechanics to still come into play. that would um, really help kind of gate off um, higher level gear and drops and stuff, so that you have to have that significantly higher level of risk. I think if they can nail that, that might be that might be.
Yeah,
Um,
there's been conversations in various different, various different Discord uh, servers and stuff like that. Essentially, kind of theory crafting these sorts of things. And as far as I can understand, as far as I've read, like Amazon Games hasn't explicitly said that they're never going to have a system like a zoning system of some way, shape, or form. Like, they've talked about areas, but they haven't talked about areas with regards to, you know, how it will affect other systems, right? And it could be because, like, you can presume that, like, they haven't said it specifically because they don't have systems, or they haven't figured out systems to, like, in that regard. Or it could be just as easy, just as likely that they haven't really fully committed to those systems yet, so they don't want to commit to talking about it publicly, and therefore almost, kind of officializing it, really. So there's various different things that could still be lying in wait for us to try out on the new alpha build whenever that comes up. That brings in more nuance to this, to what we've heard from this PvP blog.
yeah. So a couple of sources that people should know about as well, for some of this information. Um, their specifically their Twitter, like the at Play New World, is significantly active. They actually monitor that, and they have been answering people's questions and replying to them. Even since we got on the show here, there's been multiple replies. So like, putting it out there, that might be something you guys want to watch. That's how we're getting information about. We asked yesterday, if they were gonna announce anything about the next alpha. They haven't announced any details on it. Hopefully soon.
They've hinted that there is going to be an alpha um, period before the beta, so we know that there's that coming up, and it's a rapidly sinking period, like shrinking period of time, where that's meant to take place between now and the beta.
Yeah. Um, Theoretically, I would bet that it's going to be probably a 6 week, 2 weeks before the alpha. Puts it early February, in all honesty. And if they can nail that, I really think that they've got something here. Like, I'm not one of the people that like instantly re and panic about anything. And my first few reads through the dev blog, as well as the 5 or 6 times that I've watched the actual video that accompanied it, I'm not really particularly upset with anything specific. I think that I have a specific concern around the no loot drop. Um, when it comes to PvP, I think that there's um, I think that it speaks to an incentive, that if you're fighting in PvP, you should drop what's not on your person, at least.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong with this, but if you die in, say, something in, like, say, World of Warcraft, to, like, not to a player, but like to PvE things, to the environment, or like an NPC, like, you don't drop any of your stuff. You literally go back to your body and you can pick everything back up.
been about
Because
8
that-
years since I played World of Warcraft.
Because I remember I always used to shit on World of Warcraft for being, for being just basically Care Bear Central and just like pubby central, right? You always heard about these really nerdy kind of people playing. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm categorizing you in this particular group, by the way, Ace. I'm probably categorizing a lot of people in the incorrect way, but I always kind of saw it as being a very nerdy sort of thing for people to play in comparison to the other games that you could potentially play on a PC. But of all the times, I spent a good long while basically using it as as a dartboard essentially. And I thought to myself, you know what, like I'm constantly shitting on it all the time. I should actually probably pick it up and try it and see what it's like first. It might actually be fairly decent. I probably played about 10 minutes of it, and the whole you don't drop anything when you die like really got to me very quickly. So I feel you there when it comes to no loot PvP or no loot drop kind of thing, because it I mean it makes people it does make people kind of happy that they don't lose anything, or that they don't lose any kind of progress that they made, but it also means that dying doesn't really mean anything. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Bud? Ways.
I don't know, really. I'm kind of mixed.
Did I paint you in a bad light there, Ace?
No,
that's
For
fair.
having
But,
playing World of Warcraft?
I don't play anymore, so my tastes have evolved. I found fun in the game. Like I think I think there's an argument out there that the the current framing of this on a lot of different sources in terms of like Reddit and Discords and stuff like that is that you're either for PvP or you're for PvE. I have and always will do both, and I believe that the majority of people are the same way. I love large fights. I love that.
Yeah.
But
you do realize, by the way, that only the Sith deal in absolutes.
God
well,
damn it.
Sorry, I had to put that in.
That's fair.
The thing is, it's not wrong. Like, a lot of people I know who were looking at the game were not hardcore PvE, hardcore PvP. It was, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm going to flag up and do it whenever I want. But the rest of the time, if I'm not interested, I'm not going to. That said, if the incentives are there, they're more likely to flag up, right?
I just I think that it's important to note that like you don't have to have a polar opposite game, and for the people that argue that uh, a game can't survive on PvE alone, I'd like to introduce them to a game called Warframe, which has I believe close to 60,000 concurrent users daily. That PvP is almost non-existent, and the game literally survives on its PvE alone. So I'm also not saying that that's the game that I want, because it's not. It's a game that I've played, and I've had fun playing it. It's a fun game in its own right. I've also had the exact opposite, where like games like Rust, where it's basically all PvP. There's an element of the environment trying to kill you too, but effectively the game is all PvP. I think there's a balance there that they can find between the games and make everyone happy, and make it frankly more successful. You You want people to play the game. You want a lot of people to play the game. The more people that play the game, the more people that are going to opt into these factions, and more people that are going to get involved in the territory warfare. Simply put, there's a lot of opportunity here for more better PvP. Like, based on the changes, effectively removing the option of killing new players. And, you know, I don't think anybody out there is sitting here going, oh, you know, I should be allowed to just, you know, shank people as they spawn in, you know, like, because that's balanced. No, like, I don't think anybody's trying to argue that. Although there are a few people that obviously built up statistics to the point where AGS couldn't look the other way, and there was a concern raised from that.
But I think those concerns would have been present if they left it and just, you know, went the direction that it was until release. Like, you know, because you have to understand that, like, when you have a mass amount of people playing a game, there will always be a certain percentage of people who will take a mechanic or a playstyle to the extreme and not care about the consequences that it has on, you know, the community of the game at large, or the, you know, the whether the game is reaching the potential that it does, you know, for the, you know, in the eyes of the developer, right?
Yeah.
So this kind of scenario was ultimately inevitable in some way, shape, or form. It's just I personally feel that I am glad that it has occurred in the alpha rather than the full release, because in the full release it would have had so much more media, like, fury about it, and so much more drama going on about it. And it would also be a whole lot harder to be able to, for Amazon Games to basically refactor the game in some way, shape, or form to a better position that they can further do balance passes on to get it to a better state of balance. Does that seem fair?
Absolutely. So this actually reminds me of something from um, so in EVE Online there is a mechanic called war decks, or war declarations. You know, similar type concept, but it enables players in high security space to fight each other. At the request of one company getting the option to war deck another company. There's no like consent or anything like that. That's just, you know, the reality of it. A couple of years ago, CCP Games started to actually look into, hey, what's going on with this mechanic?
Yeah, what's the state of it, right?
Yeah, what's the state of this mechanic? Is it in a good position? And what they found was that it was being abused by a group of about 400 total players. And those 400 total players were affecting a colossal sum of players. Like,
I believe the number was put in the 10,000s.
Yeah. You know, just war decking everyone under the sun. And it was having a huge impact on player retention. So they went back and said, okay, we need to look at a way that we can keep risk, but also allow people to kind of, you know, get started, use high security space, and not, you know, log off for a week just to avoid getting randomly killed. It's, you know, it just wasn't in a good state. So even in EVE Online, which is notorious for being a very brutal game, a very just, you know, nitty gritty, just
Like the
abrasive
developers even,
environment.
the developers even created a song called "Harden the Fuck Up."
Yeah.
Like, that's the level we're talking.
Even there, they turn and go, hey, it's just not worth 300 people's fun if we're going to lose a ton of people in the process. If we're going to lose more than that in the process, why are we letting these people do this? You know, and
Now,
yeah,
some would say, right? I'm just going to play devil's advocate here, and you can you can hate me all you want about it. Some would say that the people who hit that brick wall of people fighting them in high sec in day 1 or day 2 were not cut out for the game to start off with.
That's the same argument we've seen here, though, right? And when I've tried having conversations with people the last day, it's, oh, well, if they were quitting because I was PKing them when they just started, they clearly weren't cut out for the game, and no loss there.
Yeah, exactly. It's a oh, they were going to be going, they weren't going to survive in the game anyway, so it's good to get them out of the game just quickly anyway. Well, you don't know that for sure, right? Like there's a lot of people who start out playing these games, may have started out being a bit of a PvE, right? If they don't, like, everyone approaches the game in a slightly different way, you know. Like
and
I've had
when I started EVE
experiences.
Online, I played ISEC mission running with a small group, mission running and mining for the better part of 2 years. Before I
Yeah,
even dipped my toes in the water with PvP, and then I very quickly became, I became a fleet commander. I eventually developed into an alliance tournament team captain. Like, you know, all starting from somebody who really only was interested in the PVE and the mining aspect of it because it's something realistically that I could do studying while I was in college. But I like the way that Scott put it in the video, that it's allowing players to develop into it and see the benefits of it after they get comfortable with the game.
yeah, exactly.
And that rate of getting comfortable is going to be different for every single person. And it took me 2 years to be comfortable in Eve, and I don't know that I'd call it comfortable. I'd call it dumb luck. And
Yeah, yeah. And it's, to be fair, it's all, you get that, you have that change of state when you come from, say, single player games to multiplayer games, right? Like, it's a different environment, it's a different kind of experience when you go from a purely sort of developer driven kind of like lane, playing single player kind of, things like Witcher, right, for example, into playing like multiplayer open world games like Grand Theft Auto Online, for example. The experience is different, and you need people to sort of have the opportunity to basically acclimatize. And there's that word, right? Acclimatize,
mhm.
right? There's a reason why that word exists in the English language, reason why that word exists in the world. It's because it is a thing that is required by people. It is a state that people have to go through in order to transition from one thing to another. And if that, people acclimatize in different degrees, right? But if you just expect people to acclimatize like that, it's it's not going to happen for the majority of people.
Exactly. And some of the people that some people, I'll put this out there. Some people may never feel comfortable going into PvP. Like, it might not be their thing. I've gamed in the past with people who like are very adamantly against going into PvP, not just for like the fear of it, but like medical conditions as well. Like, I've gamed with a guy who had a heart condition who like really could not go and get himself into a situation where the adrenaline would get going because it could kill him. So like, thinking about people like that, this is in its own right, this is a beautiful game. This is a fun experience. It's, something that we're gonna want to play it together. But I also don't want him to die in the process. Like, let him play at
Yeah,
his pace. Let him do what he wants to do. Like,
there's a limit there. Like when it actually really severely affects someone's health, then understandable.
So I'm actually kind of happy because like it creates an opportunity for me to play with more of the group that I'm accustomed to playing with. Um, I obviously still have questions. I wanna do like just a general summary section. What
Mhm.
are our thoughts and what's our one question that we would love AGS to answer? And we'll see if we can press for an answer question. So I'll start with McLeod. What's your summary? How you feel?
Oh man,
Games.
I thought we were gonna go from top to bottom in Discord. I might have some time.
You got caught
Um,
out there.
yeah, man, you flipped it on me, man. I mean, I kind of feel like a lot of the qu- a lot of the a lot of the questions that I have with the game going to or this way or that way kind of thing really stem from the idea of what Amazon games kind of sees this game to be, right? And I've talked about this with you guys, talked about this with some other guys in some different Discord channels as well. It's basically like the longevity of this game. Um, a lot of games, for example, things like Rust, right? They have a limited amount of time where they allow the game to play out, and then essentially they need to update the game. Like I don't know their processes. I don't know whether they can update the game in various different ways without doing player wipes and server wipes. But they do player wipes and server wipes basically every month. Now, I'm not entirely certain, and I don't think I've seen it written down anywhere specifically that Amazon games want this to be specifically long-term persistent on the servers. I don't know whether they want to do wipes, whether it's, monthly, quarterly, every 6 months or every year, or maybe not even at all. But whether they want to do wipes on the servers or not is a fundamental thing, because if you're doing a player and a server wipe, then it means that you don't have to get the balance for an ecosystem um, exactly right. It's one of the fundamental things when it comes to EVE Online is EVE Online has been a persistent game for the past 15 or so years. And to get that to happen, and to get that to still, like, for the game to still be a thing and still be playable and still people to still want to play it, you have to get the balance right in the ecosystem. Everything that comes into the game, everything that goes out of the game, the way that like all of that interconnects alongside all the players. You have to get that right so that something isn't out of whack and basically causes the entire game to not function because people don't have the desire or the necessity to want to play the game to get something. So it comes down to whether Amazon Games wants New World to be something that they wipe, do a player wipe and a server wipe, infrequently or not at all. Because if it's infrequently, then they can get away with a few other things, but they sacrifice, the player stories, the 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 all the various different kind of social situations that occur and all the history that occurs if they do the wipe. If they don't do the wipe, the various different wiping or infrequent wipes, then it means that they have to really work hard at getting the balance just right. And that basically precedes a whole bunch more of my questions, but that's probably one of the fundamental ones that I want to get an answer to.
Good. Bard, what about you?
As for questions, I think it's something that kind of on the topic of zones, right? Are we gonna see something like it that if you go this area, you can still be PvP'd no matter what? Maybe that happens. I don't know. As for overall reaction, it's kind of a wait and see. You know, like this could be bad, it could be good. It depends how they've implemented it, how they've balanced it, and I just want to get my hands on it and play it to see how it plays out.
Okay, understandable. That leaves me. I'm actually kind of happy. I think that this has an opportunity to make a substantially interesting game while making it accessible to all types of people, and potentially growing a player base to a size that will maintain itself and create a lot of opportunity. I think that some of the systems that they've announced, I have I have an infinite number of questions. I couldn't even begin to lay them all out. The most important one is probably, how are these factions going to work? Because I think that if they establish these factions in a coherent and functional way, they could potentially drive more PvP in the game than we've ever seen before. Even with the removal of true open world PvP, if these factions are set up, where they have conflicting missions at the same time, you could potentially put, people that are interested in fighting each other against each other. This is truly a good time for my dog to start barking.
I did think that. I was kind of wondering, like, he genuinely wants his say. It's like you've had your time. Right now, it's my time to have my say.
In his defense, there's a dog down the hall that started barking. But I think so much of this revolves around balance. They've got to give enough incentive for these factions for people to be playing in the faction, in the PvP toggled on mode consistently and for long amounts of time. Like, if they do it correct, I could see this being really good. And they've just got to nail that incentive structure. And I think a big part of that is at least getting the inventory off of people when they die.
Yeah.
Not starting them over from zero, but hey, you died, you lose what was in your backpack. Unfortunate, but go grind it again. Everything else you get to keep. I think there's stuff like that clearly needs to be fleshed out, and that we don't understand because we just don't have that level of detail. I have a level of optimism, but what I really desire most from this, and I think is probably the most critical move that Amazon Games could make right now, is doing a 15 to 20 minute video walking through in game how the game is going to be played. Like, what are some of the things we're looking for? What are, how are these factions going to work? Those kind of things. We really need to see them before we can judge these systems effectively. I think a lot of the commentary out there is dangerous because they're making a lot of assumptions and stuff like that. I think if you stick with what's written and what's in the video, I think that there's actually something positive there. Yes, there are things that need to still be answered, and yes, there are so many more questions, but it's a 7-minute video and a 2-page article.
So I'm going to touch on something because all the people saying they're refunding. Why refund now? I get that stuff has changed. Why not wait until you've got your guaranteed beta access, and if you don't like it, you can still refund that?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, right? When you get
Use
to
it
beta,
to get hands-on experience. Then if you really don't like it, okay, fine.
because beta kind of, you know, beta is the period where you can kind of somewhat correctly assume where the direction of the game is headed. When it's still in alpha, it's still kind of up in the air. Even though that we've had this sort of seismic change, it's still up in the air because we are still in an alpha state.
Yeah. And I think that's the other thing. Like, so let's talk about like the general, like, you get more flies with honey, type thing. Simply put, like a lot of the feedback, if you want to get ignored, like, and this is with anybody. Like I've done public relations and stuff on a large scale, so this is with anybody. If you want to have a company hear you, if you want to have have somebody listen to what you're saying, you have to be reasonable, you have to be respectful, you have to give them a logical argument. If your instant reaction is let's meme the crap out of this, let's shit post like crazy, like, simply put, you're gonna get ignored. Like, and I'm not speaking for Amazon, obviously. Like, I'm speaking for just anybody who does this. Like, that's the reality of it. Like, now, one argument is you can definitely speak with your wallet. That said, if you speak with your wallet now, you might not get access to it later. So, maybe, maybe withdraw if you're not comfortable with it. Pull your pre-order back. I don't think there's any penalties on either Amazon or on Steam, but still stay tuned. I think that there is a good opportunity here for some very positive content, um, and some content that I don't think we've seen before from any game. We got to remember this is new IP, this is new territory, it's a new studio with a lot of veteran game designers who, frankly have a lot of experience in this. Let's give them some rope so that they can take a run here. Like, hopefully it all checks out. Like, I don't see a reason to be negative right now.
Like cautious optimism, yeah. Like just pure negativism, like not really, not at this point. There's still all to, like, as they say, there's still all to play for.
Exactly. And I think on the PVE front, I think that they've been developing PVE content since 2016.
They just weren't showing us half of it.
And that they weren't showing it all to us, because for the same reason that we continually see new sets of armor and stuff like that, they're not going to show everything up front, and they want to, and that's kind of the purpose when it comes to testing. You're testing specific things. Like oftentimes they may have been testing, okay, are our combat mechanics the way we want them to be? Is the open world PvP something we want to do? Is the current structures and mechanics that we have here now, are these things that we want? And then adding elements in as you go forward to see if that continues on the path you want to go down, or if there's feedback saying it's probably a good way to go. you know, frankly, the game is fun. So I don't see a downside. I don't see a negative.
Without seriously messing up the balance in this change.
Yeah. I can see some things to be concerned about. And I have many more questions. But I just don't have I don't think I have it in me to lose my mind. I think that there could be something great here. If I'm wrong in 4 months, I'm wrong in 4 months. Seeing as we're not affiliated, we get no money from anywhere, and all of that. Simply put, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Who cares? You know, at least I didn't spend the time shit posting to Reddit.
Well, I kind of did, but
Oh, everybody's got their thing. So with
I had a bit
that,
of fun with it.
I think we're gonna wrap things up. We've been going for about an hour. If you guys enjoy the content, enjoy the conversation, we love chatting with people on our Discord. We're gonna pop into the public channel at the end of the episode here. Feel free to come chat with us. We're in there most days. I'm more than willing to chat. Aside from that, feel free to follow, for the people that'll watch this on YouTube after the fact. Make sure to subscribe so you get access to it ahead of time. Hit the notification thing so you get the notification when we go live. And for those that don't have it, we've got a Discord as well. And let me pull that and throw that in the chat here quick. It'll also be below the screen on YouTube. Again, thank you guys for watching. I thank McLeod and Bard for both being here and have a good conversation about this. So with that, we are